This is the location of a new prison for the city of New York. It will be a 29-story building just down the street from the Manhattan courthouse. It's one of 4 new jails the city is building in each borough except Staten Island. Combined, these jails will have 3,500 beds to house 3,300 inmates, a nearly 2/3 reduction from the incarcerated population when the plan was initially proposed in 2017. These new facilities are part of a years-long plan to reduce the incarcerated population to historic lows and close the US's most infamous active prison, Rikers Island. That might sound a little oxymoronic, but combined, these 4 jails will only be able to hold a fraction of the current population being held in the complex on Rikers Island. But while closing Rikers has long been a goal for reformers, many question the safety and efficacy of building new jails in the middle of bustling neighborhoods. The original Rikers jail opened in 1932 with a planned capacity of about 2,200 people. But within a few years, it already held 3,000. That overcrowding and subsequent stretching of resources has pretty much been a defining feature of the jail complex ever since. Decades of neglect meant that by 2017, the 7,500 people detained on Rikers Island lived in squalor. Many buildings lack air conditioning, the wind brings the scent of landfill to the island, and frequent leaks further damage the already dilapidated buildings. All of that makes Rikers a hotbed for extreme violence. In 1990, one inmate told the New York Times that if you had an enemy you wanted stabbed or killed, you could find someone who would do it for a single carton of cigarettes. This is particularly shocking because at any given time, 3/4 of the people held at Rikers haven't even been convicted of anything yet. They're just awaiting trial in jail because they can't afford bail. Even the island's location causes headaches. The whole complex is right here, and just one bridge connects it to nearby Queens. This makes it exceedingly difficult to access, for inmates needing to access resources, for loved ones attempting to visit, and for the jail's many employees. Each year, the Department of Corrections spends $31 million transporting defendants to and fro. So for decades, activists tried basically everything to close Rikers, or at least make it more humane. Armed resistance, mass protests, and lawsuits. But all of them failed. Until 2017. In 2015, a former Rikers inmate named Khalif Browder died by suicide following the trauma he suffered at Rikers Island. Subsequent protests and a damning report by an independent commission finally convinced the city to act. In 2017, then-Mayor Bill de Blasio announced the closure of Rikers. Or rather, the eventual closure of Rikers in the mid-2020s. But doing so relies on a 2-pronged plan. Number 1, reduce the total incarcerated population through a number of reforms. And number 2, build those 4 new jails, which will cost over $8 billion. There's a huge variety of methods that the city will use to reduce the incarcerated population, which will, at least in theory, save the city a lot of money that currently goes to keeping people incarcerated. For example, bail reform. As noted, 3/4 of the people held at Rikers at any given time have not actually been convicted of anything yet. They just can't afford to make bail to get out of Rikers. And a lot of them are there for pretty minor misdemeanors. A few examples of these that can earn the alleged offender a ticket to notoriously violent Rikers: possessing a small amount of marijuana, driving without a license, stealing a backpack, setting off fireworks without a permit, or jumping subway turnstiles. So instead of chucking those people into prison, supervised release programs could allow them to live their lives normally while awaiting trial. If you want to learn more about this and other methods, you can see the links in the description box below. The 3,300 who will remain incarcerated will be transferred to 4 new jails, each located near its respective borough's courthouse. Each jail will be either 19 or 29 stories and have 886 beds. With only 4% of the city's currently incarcerated population, Staten Island will not get a new prison. The idea for these new facilities is to replace dilapidated Rikers with state-of-the-art buildings more in line with those in other cities and countries. Cells will be more spacious, and common areas will provide easier access to educational and health resources. Creating community and commercial space is also a priority, with 20,000 square feet for that purpose at the Manhattan site alone. Supporters of the new jails point to these and other benefits, including the possibility of minimizing the stigma towards incarcerated populations. But others are not as optimistic, particularly the people who live in the neighborhoods where the new jails will go.
And so this jail, taller than the Statue of Liberty, enormous, one of the largest, tallest jails in the world, is again a bastardization of the idea of having smaller, fairer, more just buildings.
This is Jan Lee, a third-generation resident of Chinatown and leader of Neighbors United below Canal. NUBC is an activism group aimed at stopping construction of the Manhattan prison, which would replace two smaller existing prisons in Chinatown.
Years-long demolition, years-long construction. These things have impacts on our community.
Lee argues that by the time they're done, the total cost of these jails could far exceed the original estimates, and that only certain neighborhoods have to regularly accommodate this and similar projects.
We just keep getting jails, and we keep getting homeless shelters where other neighborhoods don't have these things, and that hems us in from future growth. That hems us in a lot of ways where us psychologically it's very hard to deal with this. And when tourists come to Chinatown and they start to see this construction going on, they see the streets being closed, it's just another indication of why people would want to stay away from this area instead of being drawn to it.
No New Jails is a coalition of advocacy groups that calls for the closure of Rikers and, as the name suggests, no new jails. They argue that any new jails are doomed to just become Rikers 2.0 over time, and that the funding for the buildings should instead go to efforts to prevent crime and recidivism.
Absolutely. We believe that people should not have to be incarcerated to receive the services that they need to heal, and this is an upside-down equation. We want to see the communities that are most affected by the criminal justice system have a robust investment in their communities in the way of job training and healthcare and youth programs and things that will keep actually people from going into jail and keep that population low so that we could have very small jails.
Nonetheless, demolition to prep the sites began in mid-2021, and work on the facilities themselves will begin under the new Adams administration with expected completion by 2027.